Thank you very much. People often ask me, why can't child abuse victims just get on with their lives? And the answer is because they never feel safe again. Think of how we all felt the morning after 9/11, especially the people in New York City. Apprehensive, fearful, difficult to concentrate, kind of hard to just move on because 9/11 just crowded everything else out. Abraham Maslow, who authored The Hierarchy of Needs, quantified the 5 levels of human needs. And the lowest levels are physical needs and safety needs. And Maslow would say that when you're missing these lower levels, it's impossible to go on. You can't concentrate on social needs, which is the 3rd need, the 4th need is self-esteem, and the 5th need is self-actualization. And Maslow would say it's impossible to go on when we're missing those lower needs. And since child abuse victims never feel safe again, it's just impossible for them to go on with their lives. Some of them are able to function, some of them can't, but they all carry the scars with them for the rest of their lives. For the past 4 years, my wife and I have been volunteering for a wonderful organization called Madregos. Madregos supports kids, young adults, and adults as they work their way through addiction. And they run beautiful retreats for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the high holidays. And they've created a safe space for these kids to come and spend the high holidays without being judged. Most of them come from observant homes. Many or most of them are no longer religiously observant. And it's kind of hard to explain. They may not be religiously observant, but they're all spiritual, because they all, in the 12 steps, they learn to communicate with a higher power, with God. Our sages tell us that true prayer only comes when we're vulnerable, and there's no one more vulnerable than someone for whom a line of cocaine or a drink could literally end their lives. And because they're vulnerable, they support each other. During this Rosh Hashanah, I got very emotional at one point during the davening. And I kind of put my head down on the table where I was praying. And within a few moments, 3 of the kids came over to me. 2 of them just patted me on the back, and one of them put an arm around me, and he said, "Hey, Rabbi, I'm here for you. If you want to talk, you can come over anytime." When was the last time an 18-year-old kid came over to support a 56-year-old rabbi? But that's the culture. Many of these children have suffered childhood abuse. And every year, our hearts are in our throats wondering which of the kids didn't return. This is a band that a brother of an abuse victim who committed suicide at the age of 18 made and asked the people there to wear it. I wear it from time to time to remind me of the incredible and awesome responsibility I have to be a voice for these kids, to let everyone know how important it is to prevent child abuse and how important it is to support the victims. And I believe that our Torah and the teachings of our sages provide us with a roadmap to finally put an end to this scourge that is killing so many of our children. And I'd like to talk about 2 distinct areas. One is the entire mindset of being real and cutting through denial and cognitive dissonance to understand that we have problems in every community, including ours. And the second is the need to support victims, to correct the imbalance of power. Our sages had a beautiful expression for conveying this duality in which we live in. Kabdeu v'chashteu. Give them kavod, be respectful, but be suspicious. Trust, but verify. The cognitive dissonance that kicks in this specific arena of child abuse, especially when the people are integrated in our community, and very often the people that we know well, we just can't get our hands around the fact that humans like you and I can do such horrible things to children. But we keep getting into trouble again and again and again when we try to impose our type of thinking on the minds of a predator. They're not like you and I. They don't think like you and I do. And I believe that the Torah gives us this message of keeping it real and understanding the world in which we live in. Another area is the imbalance of power, which I spoke about before. Our Torah lists the positive commandment of Ahavta Mesager, to love the convert, 36 times according to the Talmud. And our sages interpret the word ger not only to mean a convert to Judaism, but a stranger, someone who comes into the community and doesn't really have that social network. And our Torah tells us to look out for them, to empathize with their situation, to bring them in, as it were. And one of the horrible components about child abuse is that so very often a powerful, well-connected person will abuse and even look for a child who doesn't have that social network, who perhaps has a learning disability, who perhaps comes from a family that has challenges. And because of that, they're frightened to come forward. Just think of the Bill Cosby case. Over 40 women came forward over the past few years and said that Bill Cosby had taken advantage of them when they were in their late teens and early 20s. Listen to the interviews. What keeps coming up again and again and again? I never thought they would believe me over him. And it's that imbalance of power that our sages encourage us to address. This theme is repeated by our prophets, who always spoke about looking out for a widow and looking out for an orphan. And what they meant was people who don't have this social network. One of the most powerful quotes that had such a profound impact on my life was from Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik, who said that the function of a rabbi is to be a voice for those who are voiceless. And I wrote that in an op-ed piece in the Jerusalem Post. I wrote an open letter to the judge in Israel who was determining whether or not to extradite Abraham Mandrowitz, who was a serial pedophile who victimized so many children. And I begged the judge to take that responsibility as well. I said, that's what a judge does. And I proposed that each and every one of us should think in those terms, to reach out, to support victims. I know it's hard to really understand this or imagine it, but so many victims say that when they weren't believed, when they came forward, it was more painful to them than the abuse. Child safety education is an extremely important component of keeping our children safe. The research shows that even one conversation with a child with research-based lessons makes that child 6 to 7 times more likely to defend themselves if someone tries to take advantage of them. And that's why for the past 6 years, we've been working to bring child safety education to the families of our community. That book in the middle is a Let's Stay Safe book in English. We've translated it into Yiddish, and we're just about to release it in Ivrit and Hebrew for our brothers and sisters in Israel. And each of these editions was made with culturally congruent images and pictures so that when the children get these messages, they should get the messages in a way that's relevant to their lives. This stuff really works. We received over 50 emails and phone calls directly from parents whose children were saved by having invested the time to read these safety messages to them. And I encourage everyone to really do that. This was actually a letter that we got from an autistic 12-year-old who thanked us for saving his life. And finally, I encourage all of you to look for an answer key. That's a term that I thought of way back when I started teaching an 8th grade class in 1982. I went for the trifecta. I taught 8th grade, all boys class, and I volunteered for the weakest track of the school. And the first year, at the age of 22, I had 26 students, none of whom wanted to be in class, all of whom were totally fed up with learning and rabbis and Talmud and all of that. The thing that allowed me to get through the day and to be able to reach the children is I told myself there's an answer key. I don't know what it is, but there's a reason that this child isn't learning. It might be social, it might be educational, it might be anything else. But once I find it, I'm going to be able to reach this child. And I encourage all of us as community members, when we see children who are acting out, when we see children who are thrashing around, I call it, whether they're religiously, socially, or behaving in different ways, think about what's going on. Try to look away from their antisocial behaviors and try to think about what's going on in their lives, what is causing this. 2 years ago on Yom Kippur, a young man came to me a half hour before the end of the services, in the middle of Ne'ilah, the closing prayer of Yom Kippur. And this boy came to me in the middle of prayer. He taps me on the shoulder and he says, "Hey, Rabbi, I have a question for you. But Rabbi, I want the truth." He used the street term for being less than honest. He said, "Rabbi, don't be less than honest with me." He said, "I'm going to ask you a question. If you don't know what to answer, don't say anything. Do you think God wants me here?" And I looked at him. Why would you think he doesn't? So he says, "Rabbi, you were very polite. You walked by me every time and greeted me, ignored the fact that I was smoking on Yom Kippur and eating, driving my car. You didn't participate in the prayer, but you saw. Come on, Rabbi." And I'm sitting outside with my friends and I say, there's a half hour left to Yom Kippur. I feel like I belong inside. But isn't it disrespectful that now, at this moment, I should walk into the services after being out all day? I was quiet for a moment. And then I told him, I said, when you get through this phase in your life, you get your life back together and start a family, you'll see that parents take what parents can get. And your father wants to hear from you. He hasn't heard from you in a long time. And even if you just tell him how angry you are that he wasn't there to protect you, that's also a conversation. And I gave him my prayer book, took one for myself, and we spent the next half hour praying and crying together. And I encourage you to look past the trappings and look at the tortured souls and support them. It means so much to them when we wave a banner of support for them. I believe that by living in the real world, understanding the challenges that we face, by supporting the victims, by educating our children, and by trying to understand their lives, will make the world a much, much safer place for our children and grandchildren. Thank you very much.